Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Learning with Jelly. Today is our last day of our 30-day SQL challenge where we're going to do a brief recap of everything that we have learned. So, we are just going to recap all the fun that we have during these 30 days, even if you got frustrated, if your code kept breaking and you kept fixing it. Regardless of what your experience was, I hope you have learned something, even if it's about time management, what SQL is, how to find study buddies, whatever the learning was. I hope that you took away some learning from this 30-day challenge. So, if you're new to the 30-day challenge and you're just clicking on this video because you want an overall summary or recap, welcome. We're so happy to have you. There are two QR codes in front of the screen. One is a topic list that lists all the videos from day 1 to 29, in a Facebook support group where you can continue to network, continue to ask SQL questions or any data questions, and find study buddies. And these both will be in the description below. So I'm just going to quickly run through some concepts. We're not going to touch everything that we have learned, obviously, because there's 29 days worth of videos, but I really want to just hit some of the highlights about SQL. So we started off by defining what SQL is, and it stands for a structured query language that is used in relational databases. Relational databases means that there is a database that have tables in it, so multiple data sets pretty much. And these tables have relationships between one another. So say for instance, the customer table and the employee table may have an employee ID column within both tables that you can join on because the employee would have several customers if they were in sales. So we talk about these relationships between tables so that we can actually get insights. SQL is a language used to get insights about what is in our relational databases. We then talked about when we're creating tables that the columns have data types, so we can create columns that are integers, dates, text types, etc. And they also have certain constraints that we can assign them. So the primary key here was one of the important constraints here, where each table has a primary key that is unique to every row in that table. So, for instance, patient ID could be a primary key because each row would have a different patient ID. Customer ID, sales ID, invoice ID, and it must be unique and it can't contain any duplicate values. So, a lot of times when you're looking at entity relationship diagrams or ERDs, which we also discussed, you will see what column is the primary key to that table. We also can perform checks. We also can make sure a column does not have any null values, and so forth and so forth. From there, we hopped into the select statement and we talked about how statements in SQL is one complete process, pretty much. And clauses within statements are like options that statement can have. So the select statement has multiple options or multiple clauses. It has a select clause. Yes, the select statement has a select clause, the from, where, group by, having, order by, and limit. And we talked about all of these clauses throughout, where the where clause is going to help us filter our entire data set. The group by clause is going to let us do analysis based off of categorical variables such as region or gender or store. The having clause is going to filter based off of the group by. So you cannot have a having clause unless you have a group by. The default ordering is ascending order, so we can order things in descending order with the keyword DESC. And we also can limit the number of rows we return because if we're working with big data, we don't want to just do a select star. We want to do a limit 5, a limit 10 to kind of just look at the data. So from there, like I said, here were some snippets of the where clause that we looked at within SQLite Studio, where we can do filtering based off of like using some type of pattern recognition known as a regex expression. So in this case, the percent sign represents any characters that's in front of the Z and any characters that come after the N. So it's going to look for all cases of Zeppelin, whether it's L Zeppelin, Mr. Zeppelin, Zeppelin Jr., it's going to return all of those. We also see that we can combine filtering. So this is looking for where genre ID is 1 or milliseconds is greater than 300,000. And we also can filter based off of a list. So where city is in this list. From the where clause and looking at the other clauses, we talked about how we can update our tables using the update command, the delete from command, and the alter table command. And so in this case, we can update data that exists in our tables by using the update. In this case, we updated the title of Finding Nemo to Finding Nemo Special Edition. You also can delete information and you also can add columns to your tables as well. We talked about joins and we use them a lot in our practice questions, where we have an inner join and the left join being the two most common joins, where the inner join is going to return matching records between both tables and it has to join on a similar the same column. And a left join is going to return everything from the left table regardless if it has a match or not. So in this case, album ID is what we joined on that existed in both the albums and tracks tables. So we talked about joins. We also talked about grouping data and filtering data based off of the groups. So in this query, we selected the album ID and accounts of how many tracks exist within each album. We then grouped by album ID and filtered to only return albums that had greater than 10 tracks. And we can see in the output that that did just that. So this having filter only applies to this group by. We talked about aggregate functions where we can get counts, we can get sums, we can get averages, etc., etc. And then we talked about common table expressions known as CTEs, where it is a separate query. So we don't really have to use subqueries, where we can have that subquery exist as a temporary table, so to speak. And right after we create this expression, we can create a query to run. So in this case, we're joining our customers table in the database on this temporary invoice counts table that we created here. We talked about window functions that helped us keep row level detail. So in this case, we talked about row number as well as rank, dense rank, lag, and more. So we're doing our row number, partitioning by album ID and ordering by name as row number of track. So in this case, we're going ahead and we're doing a count. The count starts over when it gets to the new ID and so forth and so forth. For string functions, we have the upper and lower function, the subster function, and the trim function, where the subster function is going to search for a substring. So it's going to start at position 1 all the way up to position 3 and return you those first 3 characters of first name. The upper function is going to make things capital, the lower function things lowercase, and the trim function is going to trim out some white space. So this is going to help us standardize data as well as clean up our data. I'm going to back up because I realized that this visual does not match this code, but pretty much what this is doing here is still assigning the row number and it's recounting by customer ID, not album ID there. So other functions that we talked about the coalesce function, where if there is a missing value in the email field, we can put no email or we can do missing. The replace function is going to allow us to replace every instance of @example.com with @domain.com. And the stir time function is going to allow us to format dates. We learned this in a whole lot more. This was just a tip of the iceberg. So if you want to go into any more detail of this information as well as other information and you haven't watched those first 29 videos, I highly encourage you to do so. So, from these videos, I hope you have taken some beginner understanding of SQL and you continue to practice your SQL. Save those queries as .sql files, share those files in a blog, share it on GitHub, and so forth. We talked about that yesterday in day 29, and I look forward to doing more challenges in the future. Please like, comment, and subscribe to Learning with Jelly, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.